Hello, I'm Matt, and in this video I'll give you an overview of the 2-week trip I recently made to Denmark, where I was the maker in residence at the International School of Billund. My first trip to ISB was in the fall of 2015, when I got to see the creator space open for the first time. I was also there during Billund Builds Music, which has led to my current line of research, but I'll talk more about that later. I returned for 3 weeks last winter and worked with teachers to help integrate more making activities into their curriculum and got to set up the creator space's new laser cutter. During this trip, one thing I did every day was to help facilitate design and making activities with students during their after-school club. I also ran a workshop with teachers where I talked about the activities I thought were most conducive to learning in this open-ended environment, one where you provided them with a test or metric for success for the challenge, gave them materials that were accessible to them, and hopefully allowed them to iterate on their design multiple times within the hour. During the teacher workshop, I mostly allowed them to play around and be the makers in the activities that the kids could do. One of my favorite after-school activities involved a wind tube built by Bent, the caretaker at ISB. The challenge was to get an object to float at different sections in this vertical tube with wind going up it. Students would go back and forth, hot gluing different parts to their creation until their design succeeded. Another great activity was a makeshift marble run using a tool cart from the woodshop. Students collaborated to use musical tubes, pencils, and cardboard in innovative ways to make it work. Another big part of the trip was assembling a new X-Carve CNC for the creator space. A CNC is a subtractive manufacturing tool that allows you to cut away wood or other hard materials using a computer-controlled router. I ran workshops with teachers to show them the basics of how the tool works, but also got to work with a few students who had ideas for projects, like this lightning bolt prop for a play that was being put on. Another of my goals at ISB was to build musical instruments with the students, expanding on the idea that inspired Billund Builds Music, that challenging students to design and build an instrument is a great prompt to get them to engage with engineering practices, learn a little bit about the science of sound, and focus in on whichever part of the project is most exciting to them. However, one limitation we realized during Billund Builds Music was that using recyclables and found materials are not the most conducive to creating melodic instruments, and that most students ended up making sorts of drum sets. I've expanded on the build your own musical instrument prompt by developing ways to create high-quality instruments with digital fabrication machines, and adding small and cheap amplification systems that can make a rubber band instrument sound like a guitar. Here you can see a slide guitar made by a teacher at ISB with the X-Carve and the 3D printer, and a contact microphone taped to the back of a clipboard with rubber band strings going into a guitar amplifier. One project I made on the X-Carve was what I call the ISB Lally, a solid-body electric ukulele in the shape of the ISB logo. By 3D printing the nut and bridge pieces to hold the strings, and changing the height of the frets using the CNC, I've developed a process where it takes about 3 hours to make a totally functioning ukulele. One instrument-making activity I did was with the 4th grade music class. After experimenting with how rubber bands could produce different pitched notes and playing with contact microphones, the students were each given a pickup and were free to make an instrument out of whatever they wanted. This is a little clip of what the robot head guitar sounded like when it was plugged in.
That's why we're working on it!
As part of a research project in collaboration with Shady Hill School in Cambridge, I also did an instrument-making activity with the 7th graders. We started by discussing how rubber bands could play different notes, and I challenged the students to design a controlled experiment using the scientific method to determine how the length, thickness, and tension of the strings affected the pitch they played. The students were then challenged to design and laser cut rubber band instruments. I had done the same activity with a group of 7th and 8th graders at Shady Hill School in the fall, so started this part of the activity with the ISB students by showing pictures of the instruments made in Boston, along with a video of a new group of students at Shady Hill who would be doing the same activity after I got home, using inspiration from the instruments created at ISB. Most of the students had a little bit of experience with the laser cutter and were able to figure out how to use the software tools to create the various parts of their instruments with limited help. Many of them worked together and shared tricks that they were able to figure out along the way. Almost all of the students created more than one iteration, with some students going through up to 5 design cycles of cutting a part, testing it, then modifying their design. Here's a clip of one of the instruments being tested. The music teacher even brought out his looper pedal to play with.
Done? 1, 2, 3, 4.
I was very impressed with the diversity of instruments that were created, from the different shapes and styles to the different ways that they could control the pitches that were played. The iterations I saw some students go through modeled an authentic engineering design process where they came up with creative solutions to improve a part of their instrument after testing it out. With the data collected at ISB and Shady Hill, I'll be looking for how the students' creative process changed as they were given more and more examples of previous students' work, and how the inspiration affected their final instruments. Thanks for watching. Feel free to email me with any questions or comments, and you can check out soundscience.education for some more information.